It was a cold, rainy morning when Dr. Ethan Miller parked his car outside the city hospital. The sky was still gray, and the streets were quiet except for the soft sound of rain hitting the pavement. Ethan was a hard-working doctor, known by everyone in the hospital for his calm nature and quick thinking. He had just finished a long night shift the day before, but he was back again early because one of his patients needed a follow-up. As he walked quickly toward the hospital's main gate, holding his umbrella against the wind, something strange happened. A large German shepherd wearing a worn police K9 vest suddenly appeared in front of him. The dog was wet from the rain and looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and alert. Ethan stopped, surprised. The dog stood directly in his way, blocking his path. He didn't bark or growl loudly. He just stood there staring at Ethan with a look that felt more like a warning than aggression. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said softly, lowering his umbrella a little. "You lost?" The dog didn't move. He simply shifted slightly when Ethan tried to step around him. It was as if the animal was determined not to let him pass. A few hospital workers nearby stopped to watch. One nurse whispered, "Is that a police dog?" Another said, "Maybe he's searching for someone." Ethan didn't want to make a scene. He had patients waiting, and it was already a stressful day. He stepped to the right again, but the dog quickly moved to block him. Then he stepped to the left, again the same thing. The dog's body language wasn't threatening, but firm. It was like he was saying, "Stop, don't go in there." A security guard walked up, holding out his hand cautiously. "Sir, please step back. I'll take care of it." He tried to get the dog to move, but the dog barked once, loud and strong. It wasn't a wild bark. It was commanding, like a trained signal. The guard backed off a little, unsure what to do next. Ethan crouched slightly, trying to look into the dog's eyes. "It's okay, I'm a doctor," he said gently. The dog's ears twitched at his voice, and for a moment he looked down as if conflicted. Ethan noticed the tag on his vest. It was scratched and dirty, but he could make out part of a name. Rex. Rex. It was a strong name, fitting for a dog like this. The rain dripped from his fur, but he didn't seem to care. He just kept standing between Ethan and the door. People began gathering near the entrance now. Some took out their phones, others were just curious. One older woman said, "Maybe the dog is hurt." "Look at his leg." Ethan looked closely and saw a small cut on Rex's paw, but it wasn't bleeding badly. Still, the dog was limping slightly. "Poor thing," Ethan said quietly. "He's been through something." The hospital janitor brought out some food scraps, trying to lure the dog away, but Rex ignored them completely. His eyes never left Ethan. It was as though he had chosen him for some reason. Ethan felt a strange chill, not fear, but an unexplainable feeling that something was off. "Sir, maybe you should just go in through the side door," the security guard suggested. But Ethan shook his head. "No, I want to see why he's doing this." For a moment, everything went quiet except for the rain. The world seemed to pause. The doctor, the crowd, the wet ground, and that loyal dog standing firm. Finally, Ethan decided to move slowly. He took a careful step forward, hand slightly extended. "It's okay, Rex," he said. The dog tensed but didn't back away. "I'm not here to hurt you." Another step. The dog sniffed the air, his muscles tight. Ethan could now see the patch on the vest more clearly. It read, "K9 Unit, Officer Daniels, Officer Daniels." Ethan had heard that name before. A few weeks ago, a police officer by that name had been brought into the hospital after an accident. Ethan wasn't the doctor in charge, but he remembered seeing the name on a patient list. Could it be the same? Rex lowered his head slightly, then gave a soft whine, as if he understood the recognition. Ethan's heart softened. "You're looking for him, aren't you?" he whispered. Before anyone could react, the hospital doors opened behind him and an emergency nurse called out, "Dr. Miller, we need you right now, trauma case in the ER." Ethan looked back toward the hospital, torn between duty and curiosity. He sighed and said softly to the dog, "I'll come back for you." Then he walked past him quickly. This time Rex didn't block him. He simply stepped aside and watched him go, his tail barely moving. Inside the hospital, the air smelled of disinfectant and medicine. The noise of machines and hurried footsteps replaced the quiet rain outside. Ethan pushed the strange encounter from his mind as he washed his hands and rushed to the emergency room. But even while treating a patient, the dog's face stayed in his mind, those intelligent eyes that seemed to be trying to tell him something. Hours passed. Ethan moved from one patient to another, doing his usual rounds. The staff mentioned the dog a few times, saying he was still sitting outside, waiting near the door. "He hasn't moved an inch," said one nurse. "It's like he's guarding the place." Ethan nodded distractedly but didn't say anything. As the day went on, something about that morning kept bothering him. Why would a police canine act that way? They were trained to follow commands, not block strangers. And what were the chances that the name on his vest matched the name of a patient from weeks ago? When his shift finally slowed, Ethan stepped outside to get some fresh air. The rain had stopped, and the evening sun peeked through the clouds, painting the wet streets in gold. And there he was, Rex sitting near the hospital gate, alert but calm. When he saw Ethan, his ears perked up immediately. Ethan felt a pull in his heart. He walked toward him slowly. The dog stood up and wagged his tail once, just once, as if to say, "You came back. You're still here, huh?" Ethan said softly. He crouched down again, noticing the tiredness in the dog's eyes. "You didn't go home. You really are waiting for someone." A few people nearby watched them curiously. One young nurse smiled. "Doctor, maybe he's waiting for you now." Ethan chuckled a little, shaking his head. "No, I think he's waiting for something else." But even as he said it, he couldn't shake the feeling that Rex was trying to lead him somewhere, that his earlier actions had a reason. He wasn't an ordinary stray. There was purpose in his every move. When Ethan finally went back inside, the dog didn't follow. He simply lay down again near the same spot, eyes fixed on the hospital doors like a silent guardian watching over something only he understood. That night, long after his shift ended, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept remembering the way Rex had blocked his path, the look in his eyes, and that strange unspoken message behind his every action. Something deep inside told him that this was not over yet, that the dog's behavior had a meaning waiting to be discovered. And he was right. The next day, the dog would do something even stranger, something that would pull Dr. Ethan Miller into a mystery that would soon shake the entire hospital to its core. The next morning, the hospital buzzed with the usual rush, stretchers rolling through the halls, nurses calling out reports, and phones ringing nonstop. But amidst all that noise, something quietly strange was happening outside the front entrance. The same German shepherd, Rex, was still there. He had stayed all night. Dr. Ethan Miller arrived early again, sipping coffee and glancing at the hospital door as he approached. His tired eyes widened when he saw Rex sitting in the same spot, watching the building as if guarding it. The dog looked even more soaked now, but still alert and focused. His gaze shifted the moment Ethan appeared. Their eyes met through the glass door, and it almost felt like Rex had been waiting just for him. The nurse at the reception noticed too. "He's back again, doctor," she said with a mix of curiosity and concern. "He didn't move all night. Security tried to make him leave, but he refused. He just sat there." Ethan nodded slowly. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than coincidence. He changed into his white coat and tried to focus on his morning patients, but his thoughts kept drifting to the dog outside. Between rounds, he peeked through the window and saw Rex still there, eyes locked on the hallway where Ethan worked. By lunchtime, the hospital staff had grown fond of the dog. Some called him Guardian. Others whispered stories about his missing police handler. Someone even left a bowl of water and some bread near him, but he didn't touch it. He wasn't hungry, he was waiting for something only he understood. Ethan finally decided to go outside during his lunch break. He pushed through the doors, and the moment Rex saw him, he stood up, tail wagging once in recognition. It wasn't the excited tail wag of a pet. It was measured, almost purposeful. Ethan walked closer and crouched beside him. "Hey, Rex," he said softly. "Still waiting, huh?" The dog gave a low whine and looked toward the side of the building, then back at Ethan. He repeated the gesture, looked again toward the hospital's left side, then back at him, ears pointed and alert. It was like he wanted to lead him somewhere. Ethan frowned slightly. "You want me to follow you?" Rex let out a short bark, then turned and started walking toward the side of the hospital. He looked back once to see if Ethan was coming. The doctor hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the hospital doors. It felt odd to be following a dog around in the middle of his shift, but something deep inside urged him to go. "All right," he murmured. "Let's see what this is about." He followed Rex down a narrow concrete path behind the hospital. The ground was wet from the earlier rain, and the air smelled faintly of fuel and damp metal. The hospital's old generator room was nearby, fenced off and rarely used. Rex stopped in front of the small metal door leading inside and began to bark, sharp and urgent. Ethan startled at the sudden noise. "Hey, calm down," he said, stepping closer. But Rex barked again and scratched at the bottom of the door, whining louder now. Something was definitely wrong. Ethan bent down, noticing a faint whiff of gasoline. He leaned closer and saw a dark stain near the door, spreading slowly toward the drain. His medical instincts gave way to concern. This wasn't normal. He pulled out his phone and called the hospital maintenance team. "This is Dr. Miller," he said quickly. "You need to check the backup generator area. There's a strong fuel smell out here." Within minutes, 2 technicians arrived with tools and flashlights. When they opened the metal door, a strong chemical odor rushed out. One of the men coughed and said, "Sir, there's a leak in the fuel line. And look at that. Some wires near the generator are sparking." Ethan stepped back, stunned. "You mean it could catch fire?" "Yes," one of the workers replied seriously. "If the spark reached the fuel leak, it could have caused an explosion." They shut off the system immediately, ventilated the room, and began fixing the leak. Rex stood beside Ethan the whole time, silent now, as if he knew his mission was done. When the technicians finally left, Ethan knelt beside the dog and looked at him with amazement.
You saved us, didn't you?"
Rex blinked slowly, then sat down, calm and still. His fur was dirty, and his paw was still injured from the night before, but his eyes carried a quiet intelligence that Ethan couldn't ignore. By the time Ethan returned to the hospital, word had already spread. The staff whispered about the hero dog who found a gas leak behind the hospital. The maintenance supervisor later confirmed that if the problem had gone unnoticed for a few more hours, it could have caused serious damage, possibly even reached the patient wings connected by that power grid. The thought made Ethan shiver. "If he hadn't stopped me that first morning," he told one of the nurses, "I would have walked right past the problem again today. He tried to warn me twice." For the rest of the day, the hospital was buzzing with mixed feelings, shock, gratitude, and disbelief. Some nurses brought Rex food and blankets. A few officers from the local police department arrived later, saying they were searching for a missing K9 unit. When they scanned the dog's microchip, it confirmed Ethan's guess. It was indeed Officer Daniels' dog, Rex. One of the officers explained, "Daniels was injured 2 weeks ago during an operation. He's recovering at home now, but Rex disappeared right after the accident. We thought he ran off." Ethan nodded slowly. "He didn't run off. He came here. He must have followed his handler's scent." The officer crouched beside Rex, patting his neck gently. "You're still working even off duty, aren't you, boy?" he said warmly. Rex wagged his tail lightly but kept glancing back toward Ethan, as if the two now shared some unspoken connection. The next morning, Officer Daniels himself came to the hospital. He was a tall man with a kind smile, still wearing a brace on his arm. The moment Rex saw him, his whole body changed, ears perked, tail wagging fast, eyes shining. The dog barked happily for the first time in days and ran toward his partner. Daniels dropped to his knees and hugged him tightly, his voice trembling. "You found me, boy. You found me." Tears filled many eyes among the staff who watched. Even Ethan couldn't hold back a smile. The officer thanked him and explained that Rex had always been different, able to sense things that even humans couldn't. He had once detected a chemical spill during training, saving his whole unit from danger. Ethan looked at Rex and said softly, "You did it again." But the story didn't end there. Later that evening, when everything finally calmed down, the hospital director called an emergency meeting. He wanted a full report of what had happened. As the staff explained how the dog had alerted Dr. Miller and prevented a disaster, everyone realized just how close they had come to tragedy. The director stood silently for a moment before saying, "That dog deserves more than a thank you. He saved lives today." The hospital decided to hold a small ceremony the next day to honor Rex and his late-night vigilance. The story spread through local media before the event even happened. Cameras arrived and reporters waited outside the building where it all began, with a doctor who listened to a dog's warning and a K9 who never gave up his duty. That night, Ethan sat by his office window, watching the quiet street where the dog had once blocked his path. He thought about how sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. The memory of that first morning replayed in his mind. The wet fur, the sharp eyes, the determined stance. Sometimes, he whispered to himself, heroes don't wear badges or white coats. Sometimes they just have 4 legs and a brave heart. And somewhere outside the window, under the soft glow of the streetlight, Rex lay peacefully beside his handler, finally resting after fulfilling his silent mission. That evening, after the news of Rex's discovery spread through the hospital, everyone felt a mix of shock and gratitude. The quiet corridors buzzed with soft conversations about the brave K9, who had somehow sensed danger before any human had noticed it. Nurses paused between rounds to peek outside the lobby doors, where Rex now rested on a folded blanket someone had brought him. A food bowl sat beside him, but the dog seemed more at peace watching the lights inside the hospital than eating. Dr. Ethan Miller couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. He had seen many strange cases in his years of medicine, but never something like this. A dog who wasn't even assigned to the hospital had somehow detected a hidden danger that could have caused an explosion. It was unbelievable, yet there he was, lying quietly, alive and calm, as if it was just another day's work. Later that night, Ethan sat in the cafeteria with his cup of coffee, staring at the rain tapping against the windows. One of the nurses joined him. "You know, doctor," she said softly, "if that dog hadn't been here, we might all have been in danger." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, and the strange part is, he knew before any of us did. He even tried to warn me yesterday." "I thought he was just acting strange," the nurse smiled gently. "Maybe he sensed you were the one who would listen." Those words stayed with Ethan. That night, as he walked through the hallways checking on his patients, he couldn't help but feel a sense of connection with the dog. Every few hours he glanced through the front doors, and each time Rex was still there, awake, alert, and watchful. By early morning, the hospital maintenance team had finished repairing the leak. The technicians reported that if the issue had continued another few hours, the buildup of gas near the generator's spark plugs could have caused a major explosion. The thought made everyone in the hospital shudder. When the director arrived, he ordered an internal safety inspection to check every system in the building. "If one brave dog could find a danger our sensors missed," he said firmly, "then we need to do better." Meanwhile, Officer Daniels, Rex's handler, returned later that morning. His injured arm was still in a sling, but his steps were lighter than they had been in weeks. The reunion between him and Rex was touching. Almost everyone who witnessed it had tears in their eyes. The officer knelt and wrapped his good arm around Rex, who wagged his tail happily for the first time since arriving. Ethan stood nearby, smiling. "He's quite something," he said. Daniels looked up, eyes moist. "He always has been. When I was in training, Rex saved me once too. We were testing for chemical leaks in a warehouse, and he barked like crazy until we cleared the building. 5 minutes later, one of the gas pipes burst. He's got this instinct, like he can smell danger before it happens." Ethan nodded in amazement. He probably smelled the gas leak here too. But instead of alerting the staff, he came straight to me. "I wonder why." Daniels smiled faintly. "Maybe he saw something in you. Dogs like Rex, they can read people better than we can. They sense energy, emotion, purpose. You were calm, not afraid. Maybe that's why he trusted you to act." Those words filled Ethan with quiet pride and wonder. He looked at Rex and saw not just an animal, but a loyal soul who followed his instinct to protect others. Later that afternoon, as the sun broke through the clouds, a small crowd gathered near the hospital's front entrance. The director, some police officers, and the local press had arrived to acknowledge the dog's heroism. There were smiles, laughter, and even a few banners made by the children's ward that read, "Thank you, Rex," in bright letters. The atmosphere was cheerful, but beneath it all there was deep respect. Everyone understood that the outcome could have been very different if not for one determined dog's warning. Ethan stood on the hospital steps with Officer Daniels as reporters asked questions. One journalist turned to Ethan and asked, "Doctor, what was the first moment you realized something was wrong?" Ethan thought for a second. "The first time I saw Rex, he wouldn't let me pass through the entrance. I didn't understand it then. I thought he was just confused or maybe scared. But now I realize he was trying to stop me from walking toward danger. He must have smelled the gas even then." The journalist nodded, writing quickly. "And how did you feel when you discovered the leak?" Ethan smiled softly. "I was stunned. I'm trained to save lives in operating rooms. I never imagined a dog would save ours." The crowd chuckled warmly at his answer. Rex sat quietly beside Daniels, calm and proud. His fur had been brushed clean and someone had placed a small police medal on his collar. Every time someone clapped or cheered, his ears perked up, but he stayed still, almost humble in his demeanor. When the ceremony ended, Ethan knelt beside Rex and rubbed his head gently. "You did good, hero," he said softly. Rex licked his hand once, eyes kind and bright. But later that evening, when everyone left and the hospital quieted again, Ethan found himself drawn once more to the back area where Rex had led him. The air was clear now, the smell of fuel gone, and workers had finished sealing the pipes. But he wanted to see it with his own eyes, to fully understand how close they had all come to disaster. As he stood there, the dim lights flickering against the metal walls, he imagined what might have happened if Rex hadn't been there. Patients in surgery, nurses on duty, the elderly in the recovery ward. Hundreds of innocent lives could have been lost in moments. The thought made his chest tighten. Just then he heard footsteps. It was Officer Daniels. "You're still here?" he asked with a gentle smile. Ethan nodded. "I just needed to see it again." "It's unbelievable." Daniels looked at the sealed pipes and sighed. "You know, dogs like Rex, they don't stop working. Even when they're off duty, they carry the duty inside them. He must have felt something here. Maybe he thought his partner, me, was still in danger. Maybe he thought saving this place meant protecting me too." Ethan looked at him thoughtfully. "It's amazing how much loyalty a dog can hold." Daniels nodded, his eyes softening. "Rex has been with me for 7 years. He was there when my wife passed away. He never left my side. Sometimes I think he feels things even I can't put into words." The two men stood silently for a moment, the hum of the repaired generator echoing faintly in the background. When Ethan returned to his office, he found a message waiting for him from the hospital board. They wanted him to prepare a short statement for the upcoming community newsletter, highlighting the event as an example of teamwork and vigilance. But Ethan knew deep down that no words could truly capture what had happened. The instinct, the courage, and the silent understanding between man and dog. That night, before leaving, Ethan passed by the main lobby one last time. Rex and Daniels were sitting near the door, ready to head home. The dog's eyes met his again, calm and steady. Ethan smiled. "You take care of him," he said to Daniels. Daniels chuckled. "Oh, believe me, he's the one who takes care of me." They both laughed quietly. As they left, the hospital lights glowed warmly behind them, reflecting on the wet pavement. The air felt lighter now, safer, as if Rex had left behind a sense of protection that would linger long after he was gone. That night, when Ethan finally lay in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about the strange way the world works. Sometimes help doesn't come from the people we expect. It comes from a loyal heart that simply refuses to give up. He smiled to himself before closing his eyes. Somewhere out there, a brave dog had reminded an entire hospital what it meant to listen, to trust, and to care, and that silent lesson would stay with Dr. Ethan Miller for the rest of his life. The following morning, the hospital felt brighter than usual. The air was filled with a soft sense of pride and calm. People walked through the halls smiling, greeting each other kindly, and the story of the brave canine named Rex was on everyone's lips. Patients had read about him in the local newspaper. Even children in the pediatric ward had drawn pictures of him wearing a doctor's coat and medal. It was one of those rare days when a hospital, a place often full of worry and pain, was filled instead with gratitude and joy. Dr. Ethan Miller arrived early that day, carrying a cup of coffee and a warm smile. As he stepped through the main entrance, he noticed something new. On the reception desk, someone had placed a small framed photo of Rex. Underneath, a note read, "Our guardian." Ethan chuckled softly. "You've become a star, boy," he murmured to himself. When he reached his office, he found an envelope waiting for him. Inside was a letter from the police department, thanking him for his quick response and cooperation during the incident. Attached to it was a short note from Officer Daniels that said, "Rex and I owe you one. He doesn't usually trust people easily, but he trusted you. That means something." Ethan read the words twice. They touched him deeply. He thought about the first moment he saw the dog blocking his way in the rain, the intensity in those eyes, and how close they had all come to a terrible disaster. Sometimes fate sends a messenger in the most unexpected form. Later that morning, Officer Daniels and Rex visited the hospital again. This time, Rex was clean, his fur shining, his vest replaced with a fresh one carrying a shiny badge. The children from the recovery ward were gathered near the lobby to meet him. They clapped and cheered as Rex entered, wagging his tail slowly. One little girl reached out her hand and Rex gently licked her fingers, making her giggle with delight. Ethan watched from the side, smiling warmly. "He seems happier," he said as Daniels approached him. Daniels nodded. "He's been calmer since yesterday. I think he finally feels his job here is done. You know, after I got hurt in that operation, I was unconscious for a few hours. When I woke up, Rex was gone. I thought he'd been taken by another unit, but later they told me he ran off near the hospital road. It seems he tracked my scent all the way here." "That's amazing," Ethan said softly. "It is," Daniels replied. "But what amazes me more is how he sensed the danger here. Dogs like Rex are trained to detect substances, but this was different. He wasn't on duty. He wasn't following any command. He did it because he felt it." Ethan nodded, his eyes following Rex as the dog calmly let a child pat his head. "Maybe instinct is a kind of miracle," he said quietly. Daniels smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe it's love." The words hung in the air for a moment, simple yet powerful. Later in the day, a small ceremony took place in the hospital courtyard. The director, several staff members, and local reporters gathered to present Rex with an official certificate of bravery from both the hospital and the police department. There were flowers, applause, and even a few tears as the staff recounted the story. Ethan was asked to speak as well. When his turn came, he stepped forward, holding the microphone gently. "I've spent my life studying the human heart," he began, "but yesterday, I saw the power of another kind of heart, the one that beats inside a loyal friend who doesn't speak our language, yet understands what truly matters. Rex didn't just save this hospital. He reminded us that courage doesn't need words." The crowd applauded warmly. Officer Daniels patted Rex's side and whispered, "You did it, partner." The dog barked once proudly, tail wagging high. After the ceremony, Ethan joined Daniels and Rex for a quiet walk around the building. They stopped near the spot behind the hospital where everything had begun, the old generator room. The metal door was now painted fresh, the smell of fuel gone, and a small sign had been added that read, "In memory of Rex's courage." Ethan stood there for a long moment. "It's strange," he said, "how something so dangerous could hide right behind these walls and none of us knew." Daniels nodded. "Sometimes danger hides where it's quietest." "But Rex, he doesn't ignore the quiet. He listens to it." Ethan smiled at that. "You sound like you've learned from him." Daniels laughed softly. "I have. He taught me more about patience and trust than any training ever could." They both looked at Rex, who sat between them, head held high, ears twitching in the soft afternoon breeze. His expression was calm, wise almost. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light across the courtyard, people started to leave. But before he went, Daniels turned to Ethan. "You know, Doctor, you might not realize it, but you were part of this too. Rex may have sensed the danger, but you're the one who listened. Most people would have ignored him." Ethan looked thoughtful. "Maybe so. But something about him, I don't know, I just couldn't walk away." Daniels nodded, and that made all the difference. That night, as quiet fell over the hospital, Ethan sat by his desk writing a reflection for the hospital's internal bulletin. He wanted every staff member to remember what happened, not just as a story about a dog, but as a lesson in awareness and compassion. His note read, "Heroes don't always wear uniforms or stethoscopes. Sometimes they have pause. They don't speak, but they act. They don't plan, but they feel. And when they trust us enough to follow, miracles happen." He printed it out and pinned it on the staff board before heading home. The next few days were peaceful. Patients smiled when they saw Rex's photo, and staff members often shared small stories of the event with newcomers. But for Ethan, something inside had changed. He found himself paying more attention, to details, to people, to the quiet things he used to overlook. He realized how many times in life warnings come softly, through intuition, through signs we almost miss, or sometimes through the actions of a loyal creature simply doing what feels right. A week later, Ethan received a message from Officer Daniels. It was a photo of Rex sleeping soundly on the porch of his home, his medal lying beside him. The text read, "He's finally resting. Guess he knows his job's done." Ethan smiled as he read it. He looked out his office window, where the city lights twinkled against the night sky. He whispered softly, "You did good, Rex. You did more than you'll ever know." And deep inside, he felt a quiet warmth, a reminder that sometimes the greatest miracles happen not in the operating room or under bright hospital lights, but in the silent bond between a man and a dog who refused to walk away. That moment marked the end of chaos and the beginning of a story that everyone at the hospital would tell for years to come. The day a loyal police dog turned confusion into hope and left behind a lesson that courage can come from the most unexpected places. The next morning brought a new kind of energy to the hospital. The atmosphere was lighter, filled with small smiles and quiet laughter. Nurses moved through the hallways with a spark of warmth, and patients who usually stayed silent now talked about the brave police dog who had saved them all. It felt as if Rex had left a piece of his courage behind. Dr. Ethan Miller walked into the lobby holding a cup of hot coffee. As soon as he stepped inside, he saw the familiar sight of Rex's framed picture near the reception desk. Someone had added a small golden sticker on it that said, "Hero of Hope." Ethan smiled softly. He still couldn't believe how one animal's actions had brought so many people together. He sat down in the cafeteria by the window, watching the morning sun spread over the hospital courtyard. It was peaceful now, with no smell of fuel, no alarms, and no fear. Just calm. For a place that had nearly faced disaster, it now felt almost holy. As he sipped his coffee, Nurse Julia came to his table. She had been there during the entire incident. "Doctor," she said cheerfully, "you should see what the kids from the pediatric ward made for Rex." She handed him a handmade card. On the front was a drawing of a dog wearing a doctor's coat with a red cross. Inside, the children had written, "Thank you for saving our home, Dr. Rex." Ethan laughed softly, touched by their innocence. "He'd love this," he said. "You can almost feel his spirit around this place," Julia nodded. "Yes, it's strange, isn't it? It's like the hospital feels alive again." Later that day, a small local TV crew visited to film a short segment about the story. The staff was excited but nervous. Hospitals rarely had good news stories to tell. When the reporter asked Ethan to speak on camera, he hesitated at first. He wasn't someone who liked attention, but when he looked at Rex's photo on the wall, he decided to do it. Not for fame, but for the message behind it. The reporter smiled at him and said, "Doctor, people across the city are calling Rex a miracle dog. What do you think made him act the way he did?" Ethan thought for a long moment before replying. "I think he felt something that we humans sometimes forget. Pure duty and love. He wasn't thinking of rewards or recognition. He just wanted to protect," the reporter nodded. "And you? You followed him when most people might have ignored it." "Why?" Ethan smiled gently. "Because sometimes doing the right thing doesn't always make sense at first. But when something or someone keeps insisting you listen, maybe you should." That clip later went viral across the local community. People shared it with captions like "The dog that saved a hospital" and "Faith comes in many forms." Messages of gratitude flooded the hospital's social media pages. Some people even sent donations to support animal rescue groups in Rex's name. But for Ethan, the most meaningful moment came a few days later, when Officer Daniels and Rex returned once more. This time quietly, without cameras or reporters. Daniels wanted to thank everyone personally before moving to a new post outside the city. Rex walked beside him proudly, tail wagging, eyes bright. As soon as they entered, nurses, guards, and even patients called out happily. "Rex is back," someone shouted. The entire lobby filled with excitement again. A few children came running down the hallway, holding toys and cards. Rex greeted them calmly as if he remembered everyone. Ethan walked forward, smiling. "Well, look who it is," he said warmly. "The hero himself," Daniels laughed. "He's been restless at home. I think he wanted to come here one more time." Rex stepped closer to Ethan, pressing his head lightly against the doctor's leg. Ethan bent down and rubbed his ears. "You know, you've done more for this hospital than anyone ever could. We owe you." The dog tilted his head as if he understood. For a moment, it felt like they were sharing a quiet thank you without words. Daniels then handed Ethan a small envelope. "We wanted you to have this," he said. Inside was a photograph of Rex and Daniels in their police uniform, both looking proud and strong. On the back of the photo were the words, "To Dr. Miller from the partner who listens." Ethan looked up, touched. Thank you. I'll frame this. That afternoon, Daniels and Rex joined Ethan for lunch in the hospital garden. The three of them sat under the shade of a tree while patients and staff passed by, smiling and waving. Daniels told more stories about Rex, how he once tracked a lost child in the woods for 16 hours straight, how he refused to eat until his handler was safe after an accident, and how he always sensed when something bad was near. Ethan listened with deep respect. He's more than a dog, he said quietly. He's a reminder, Daniels nodded. Yes, he reminds us that loyalty isn't about words, it's about action. He just does what's right even when no one's watching. After lunch, as Daniels and Rex prepared to leave, the hospital director approached them. Officer Daniels, he said, before you go, we have something for you both. He handed Daniels a box wrapped in blue paper. Inside was a silver plaque engraved with the words, "To Canine Rex for courage, instinct, and loyalty beyond measure. From City Hospital with eternal gratitude." Everyone clapped, and even Daniels' eyes grew moist. Rex barked once, loud and clear, as if saying, "You're welcome." Ethan couldn't help but laugh. I think he approves. As the car pulled away later, Ethan stood at the entrance watching them go. The sun was setting and the orange light bathed the hospital in a golden glow. He thought about how strange it was that a story which began with confusion and fear had ended with warmth and unity. In the following weeks, life slowly returned to normal. Patients came and went, doctors worked their shifts, and the hospital continued its rhythm. But something deep had changed in everyone's heart. Whenever things got tense or stressful, someone would glance at Rex's picture on the wall and smile. It was like having a silent reminder that hope and bravery could come from anywhere. Ethan often stopped by that photo too. Each time he felt calmer. He had faced many long nights in his career, moments of loss, exhaustion, and doubt. But now he carried a new kind of strength within him. A reminder that even in chaos, one act of faith could change everything. Months later, a small package arrived at the hospital. Inside was another letter from Officer Daniels. He wrote that Rex had retired from active service and now spent his days helping at a therapy center for children with trauma. The letter ended with, "He may not wear the canine badge anymore, but he's still saving lives in his own way. Just quieter now." Ethan smiled when he read that. He placed the letter beside Rex's framed photo and whispered, "You deserve every bit of peace, boy." And every time the hospital faced a hard day when power went out, or emergencies filled the ER, the staff joked kindly, "Don't worry, Rex is watching." It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was comfort. The hospital might have returned to its daily noise and movement, but the spirit of one loyal dog remained in every hallway, every heartbeat, and every saved life. He had turned chaos into gratitude, fear into courage, and strangers into a family. Dr. Ethan Miller often said later to new interns, "Medicine saves the body, but sometimes something else saves the heart." Never ignore a sign that comes from kindness or instinct. You never know when it's trying to save you. And as years went by, that story lived on, not as a headline or a news clip, but as a legend whispered through the halls. A reminder that one rainy morning a police dog refused to let a doctor pass, and by doing so, saved an entire hospital from disaster. It was a story about loyalty, love, and the quiet miracles that happen when we choose to listen. And though Rex was no longer there, every sunset that painted the hospital walls seemed to carry his spirit, strong, calm, and endlessly faithful. The hospital doors still opened and closed every day, but to those who knew the story, one truth always remained clear. Sometimes, the greatest guardian doesn't wear a uniform at all. He simply walks on four legs, guided by a heart that never gives up.